Welcome back, YouTube pipe smokers. Mutton Chop Piper here. Well, today's video is entitled, How much moisture should my tobacco have? Now, this video is primarily for you new pipe smokers or you intermediate pipe smokers who want to know, okay, man, this tobacco feels awful wet. Should I be smoking it, or why is my, this tobacco is giving me horrid tongue bite? Why, it's really, really wet. How do I go about fixing this problem? Okay, first of all, let's talk about what moisture does to tobacco. When it burns. Moisture, when you load your pipe with tobacco, the tobacco is going to have some degree of moisture in it. Once you start smoking it, that moisture is going to turn to steam. And that steam is either going to go through the pipe to your mouth, or it's going to condensate to the bottom, to the heel here of your pipe. Now, you've got the burning tobacco here, which is going to create steam and condensate into moisture, and you've got moisture coming in from your mouth. It's going to travel down through here, and it's going to be here. So the drier the tobacco, the less of this condensation you're going to have. The less of that steam is going to be produced. So it is to your advantage to have dry tobacco, somewhat dry tobacco. Now let me explain a little bit further after I explain what effect moisture has on tobacco. Now, the two things that will happen when that moisture, if it's too wet, if your tobacco is too wet, then you will constantly be trying to keep that pipe lit. You'll light it, get your char light, you'll start to light it, you'll get your ember, and you'll start to smoke it. Well, you'll notice that you'll draw on it, and the next thing it'll go out. So you'll light it again, draw on it, it goes out. So you tamp it, light it. This time you say, okay, I'm not letting this thing go out, and you start to draw harder and faster. Well, what that does is it causes that tobacco and that your bowl to start to heat up. So now you've got steam created by the moisture, and you've got your cadence has quickened to try to keep that wet tobacco burning. The combination will hit your tongue, and next thing you know, you'll have rampant, it will be bad, tongue bite. So you'll stop and you'll say, okay, well, I'm doing something wrong here. It's not that you're doing something wrong, it's the condition of your tobacco. Now, if your tobacco is too dry, then one, it will not produce very much steam and condensation in the bottom of your bowl. But because it's so dry, it will burn fast. Even if you draw lightly, it will burn fast because it's like dry leaves. It will burn easily. And the faster it burns, the hotter it's going to get. And it will give you tongue bite as well. So you do not want it too dry, and you do not want it too wet. So let's talk about the condition of some tobaccos when they get to you. When you order a tin, or you go to your tobacconist and you get a tin, most of the tins today are at a pretty good moisture level. Some companies just absolutely drown their tobacco in moisture. One that comes to mind is Samuel Gawith. So those tobaccos that are really, really wet, or even the ones that are pretty wet, need to be dried. Now, I'm going to show you the way that I dry tobacco. There are senior tobacco smokers out there. There are guys that have been smoking just as long as I have, 25, 30 years, 15 years, and they have already got their own way of drying tobacco. If you have a different way of drying tobacco, please leave a comment. And then I would ask that you new pipe smokers or intermediate pipe smokers kind of go down through the comments and look at them and see if somebody else has either a better way or a different way of drying out wet tobacco. Okay, so this is what I do. Let's say I get a tin of Samuel Gawith. I open it up and boy, it's horrible. So what I do is I get a pan like this. It's a pizza pan. It's relatively thin. And I line it with paper towel or absorbent towel. For you people that live in Europe, it may be an absorbent kind of towel. And then I spread out the tobacco on top of it. And then I take more paper towel and I put on top of that. And then I take another pan just like this and I slide it on top to keep pressure on the paper towel that's on the bottom, the tobacco, and the paper towel on the top. And I leave that for 12 hours. 12 hours, I check it. I take the top one off, the top layer of paper towel, and I kind of feel it. If it's still kind of wet, then I turn the paper towel over and I put the pan back on top and I leave it for another 12 hours. Once most of the moisture has been soaked up or out of the tobacco, I take the paper towel off and I try to carry the paper towel with the tobacco off to the side, wipe this down, and then I take the tobacco and I put it on this bare surface with no paper towel, and I check the moisture. If it's still a little wet, still got a little moisture in it, then I leave it on this for another 6 hours. Then I keep checking to make sure that it's not too dry. Once it's to that point, I use a ball jar. I'll put the tobacco in a ball jar. Now, from there, where do we go? Okay, so like I said before, most tobacco tins, when they come in, the moisture level is pretty good. But it's still too wet. So where does the tobacco need to be for optimum burning? For me, it's right on the verge of being too crispy, being too dry. Now, when I talk about being too dry, what I'm talking about is right now it's fall, it's autumn. Trees will start to change their color, the leaves will start to die and fall to the ground. Once they dry, go outside and take a couple of them and rub them around in your hand. Most of you have probably already done this, but that is absolutely too dry. That's the dryness you don't want. But you want it to where when you pick up the tobacco, you're going to think to yourself, man, that's too dry. I think that's too dry. If it doesn't crunch like a dry leaf, but it does to a certain point. It's hard to explain, but you do not want any moisture at all if you can help it. You want a little bit of moisture. But that little bit of moisture will keep the tobacco burning cooler. Although it's going to produce steam and moisture, it won't produce as much. And yet you'll be able to maintain that ember burning without having to increase your cadence or constantly relighting the tobacco. So how do you get it there? Well, for me, what I do is I take a couple of pinches of tobacco, of whatever tobacco that I want, and then I put it aside. I put it in either on a piece of paper or this. This is perfect. If you can get one of these, this is a vegetable chopper. Now I've talked about these in a few of my other videos, but I can get these at our dollar store for $1, and they're not much more at a regular store. So this is a vegetable chopper. So you take your tobacco and you spread it out on that, and you set it aside for an hour. Then you check it, no, for another hour. Check it. Once it feels like it's starting on the verge of getting too dry, that's when you want to load your pipe. By using tobacco that's on the verge of being too dry, but still has some moisture still in the tobacco, like I said before, it will maintain your burn. Your ember will be able to burn the tobacco without you having to draw to increase your cadence or increase your draw. Plus, it will not produce as much steam or moisture. So by not producing as much steam and moisture, you won't have as much at the bottom of your bowl that you might possibly suck into your mouth. And that's something you do not want to do. Now, other people, again, have their own methods for drying the tobacco right before they load up their pipe. If you've got a great method, then please put a comment, leave a comment, let everybody else know. I want my channel to be not just me teaching, but if there's other people out there, guys that have been doing this for 30 years and you've got a technique that works, please, I love those comments where people either give advice to other people or they have a different approach to a problem or a different approach to the video that I'm doing. So I'm all for that. If you've got a different way or a more sensible way than I do, then please leave a comment. And I encourage you new pipe smokers, check out those comments. There may be something in there that will work better for you than what I'm doing. And also, I encourage you new pipe smokers to experiment. Take some wet tobacco, put it in your pipe, and try to light it, and see how it reacts. Take some tobacco straight out of the tin that's still wet but not soaking wet. See how that reacts. Take the tobacco that I suggest, where it's on the verge of being too dry, and put it in your pipe and check that out. And then put tobacco, if you've got some, that is absolutely, completely dried out, and put it in your pipe and see how it reacts. Each of us react to smoking tobacco different, so you may be able to smoke wet tobacco, or you may be able to control dry tobacco. But for most of us, I think just a little bit of moisture, just a hair bit of moisture, where the tobacco is on the verge of being too dry, I think is about the perfect range to smoke your tobacco. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. Until my next video, I want to wish you and your family happy piping.